Okay, so we were studying yesterday the question as to whether giving over a lost item to the police or the TTC or the Eged bus organization, is that sufficient in order to fulfill your mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda? He says, if he says, if you can ascertain that the police or Eged or whatever organization is doing their proper diligence in returning lost items, then you have every right to give it over to them. But avalim he machzir et haveda lelo simanim, o shelo mashrim et haveda atzlam kefi halacha ein lamosra lahem. But if they're not returning lost items with proper simanim, but they're just letting people rummage through the lost items and take whatever they claim to be theirs, or they don't hold on to the lost items properly, they just dispose of them, so then you should not give it over to them. V'chein ma shelefi hachok hamotze zoche bevailus ha'aveda imkim et chovot hachok hamutalot alav v'lo nimtza bal aveda tol zman mesuyam. He says, and furthermore, if they have a policy that, if these items go unclaimed within a certain amount of time, and the person doesn't come forward, then the person who found it gets to keep it. Zed davar shenogeret halacha. This is against halacha. You're not allowed to keep it for yourself. That goes against the laws of the Torah, because generally speaking, we say, you have to keep it until Eliyahu comes. So that's where we were up to yesterday, and we were looking at this footnote. And I had mentioned that if you want to keep it for yourself, then you have to just mark it down its market value, and you have to say that if the owner should come forward, I will give him the value of the item. So then he writes, and this is where I think you'll see this borne out. ולרשום בפנקסו את האבדה שמסר עם סימניה. Reb Shlomo Zalman advocates as follows. Give over the item, this is what you can do. Give over the item to the police. Write down in your own personal ledger or in your own personal notes. Today I write down everything in my computer, right? And I keep a file. So whatever it is, you found a lost item on such and such a date. These were its simanim. There's gold watch, which had the initials EG on the back, or love you, Francis, whatever, and you have that marked. Or maybe even best to take pictures of it and keep it in the file. V'im yitbarer shamishtara hechazirat ha'aveda shelo kedin yishalem li va'alav, and therefore you have a record of it. And you can obligate yourself to say, listen, if the police gave it away or disposed of it improperly, I will owe this to the owner. And the reason why this is acceptable is because you're committing yourself to make the owner whole, either through the police, who will return the lost item to him, or through yourself. And you have that option. And that would be the proper thing to do. Now, you may not want to take that risk. You may want to say, why should I accept upon myself that liability, that if the police mishandle it, which unfortunately today the police are understaffed, overwhelmed, and I'm not sure that you could necessarily, I don't know, I'm not saying this as a pejorative about the police. I'm just saying that this is not their top priority. And right, it shouldn't be. That's true. And I don't know about the professionalism of the TTC's lost and found. I just don't know. And so if you want to sort of wash your hands of it and basically say, I don't have the time or the energy to start posting signs around the community and where I found this item and so forth and so on, I'll just give it to the TTC lost and found. Nevertheless, be prepared that if you take that route, you should keep a record of what you found and be prepared that if, in fact, the TTC mishandles the situation, you have to take responsibility for it.
But imagine if the TTC does what they say they
Yeah.
keep it for 60 days and then no one claims that they put it up for auction. Are you still responsible then?
No. Because the halacha is that it has to be munachad sheyavu Eliyahu. Now,
on that basis, you should never give it. The likelihood of giving it back to the owner within that limited time may not be that great.
No, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yes, it depends. If the person knows they lost it on the TTC and they approach.
Yeah. Now, a privately owned corporation, like a shul, like I think if you go to the kollel, they'll put up a sign that says, any item that is left here will be kept for 30 days and then will be disposed of. Yeah, right. So there is such a right to do that because they're basically saying that you leave your things here at your own risk, and we will take ownership of it. So if it's a private entity, and the TTC, you could argue, is a private entity, and even if it's government funded, it's basically an entity that can say that, then they have a right to make that policy that any item that's found here will be kept for 60 days and are lost and found, and then we'll dispose of it or we'll sell it. And it could be that you're off the hook if the item is found in the subway system for that reason. Yeah.
Well, found a necklace, valuable necklace, and you give it over to an authority. You never know that person, that authority could keep it for themselves or whatever. That that you might as well yourself because and do whatever you need to do halachically, probably because that there's a chance that authority probably will not may not.
I'm not so sure. I think that in today's world where everyone's phone is a camera, the best thing to do would be to take a photo of it and take a photo of the person who you're giving it to and also write down their name. And there should be ways to follow up.
The story recently, I just heard this on the radio. This famous Toronto sportscaster, he was going through customs and he found this valuable necklace. He didn't know what to do. Somebody had left it in security, right? So what he did is he gave it to the authority and he took a picture of it and he has a large social media following and posted it. So
Really?
Yeah.
So that's probably a good idea. Post it on your social media. No, it's not because the question was it could have been Yir Shalom Midas. And we paskin in the Gemara that Yir Shalom Midas lo haviyish. That if it fell from the person before they had Yeush, and you don't know when you found it, had they already had Yeush, so then that Yeush doesn't count. Yeah. So now, v'yesh od derech, ki yuchol limsor es hapratim shelo b'shel ha'aveda lemishtara, v'heim yifanu et bal ha'aveda elav. There's another option, and I don't know if it always works. You can give your information and the information about the lost item to the police and tell the police that if anyone comes forward, that you should give them my number and give them my contact information. So apparently that works in Israel, that you give the lost and found division, say, here's my information. I found a gold watch. It has simanim, and tell the people to contact me. Let's see what he says in the footnote. He says, Kain Kosov b'Pischei Choshen, that's what Rav Bloy says. V'chein Kosov b'Sefer Shari Mishpat, dim yesh chashash, she'hamishtara lo titnaheg al pi din. He says, this is what you should do if you have a concern that the police will not act according to halacha. Yimsor lahem hoda'a shematza aveda plonis v'shem yifanu et bal haveda elav. That you give them this information, give them your business card with the type of item that was lost, and tell them that if anyone comes forward, please have them contact me. Okay, now I don't know whether the police here or the TTC here will accept that. I have no idea. He says, "V'chol zeh davka ba'aveda shematza barechov." He says, up until now, we've been speaking about finding a lost object on the street. Aval shoneh hadavar imatza aveda ba'otobus tzibori, kegon be'eged o bishar hachaverot. He says, but it'll circumstance, the halacha will change if you find the gold watch on a bus, on a public bus, such as an Eged bus, or on the train, or in the TTC subway. He says, Kevin shekayam etzlam machlakat abedot. He says, because since those entities have a lost and found department, v'lachein rashai limsor et aveda lamachlakat abedot. He says, and therefore there's no question that it's permissible to surrender the item to their lost and found division. V'hadavar mutar afal pi shebemachlakat abedot hanal lo makpidim al klalei ha'halacha. And it's permissible to do that even if they're not going to be acting according to the halacha. Even if they're going to be disposing it after 30 or 60 days, you're still permitted to give it over to them. Why? V'hatam bazeh katfu haposkim ki adam shenichnas la'otobus o sekein al dat haklalim hanohagim ba'otobus. He says, because once you get on the bus, or once you get into the TTC tunnel, what is it called? In the subway station, you are committing yourself implicitly to comport yourself according to the rules of that entity. And one of the rules that you implicitly submit to is that when you lose an item, all lost items are submitted to the lost and found department of the bus company or of the subway company or of the train company. So it basically what Rav Sharaga is saying is that if there will be a difference in halacha between finding something on the street versus finding something on the train or the bus or the train station. He says because and that's what we had surmised. Just like if you lose something in the synagogue or in the Beis Medrash, you commit yourself to the rules of that entity, and so therefore that entity has a right to make a policy. If we make a policy that's published, and that policy is that all lost items will be held for 30 days, and after 30 days, if you don't come to claim an item, we're going to hawk it, and the proceeds will go to buying new talesim, or whatever, or new chumashim, So then we have a right to do that. And so what does he say on the bottom? He says, Ken Kosov b'Sefer Hashavas Aveda Kahalacha, Shem Hagon Rav Moshe Karp, Hagon Gross V'Ain Sham Shabiru Kamoshe Kosov Kan Rabbeinu Hagon HaMachaber Shlita. So he says, basically, there's a difference between a public area versus a private area. And private here means that it's a corporate entity, also as a private area. So the TTC subway is also considered a private area vis-a-vis these halachas. As long as the building has a uniform policy. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then you're whatever the authority does, you've done your job of following their rules.
That's right.
If you're inside the zero student, just down on the bench, it's a main building, public area.
Yeah.
And you find it in the
yeah.
Whatever.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Now it's probably it's probably Yeah, it's probably advisable to still take a photo of it and to give your contact information to the security desk, but you should surrender it to the security desk and basically, take the name of the security officer. I can't tell you that the security officer that works at the Xerox building is going to be an honest guy. He may decide, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
right. But what you can do is take a photo of it, take a photo of the security desk, nice man that's there, post on your social media. If you lost a gold watch, go ask, Sahib or whatever his name is. Yeah, yeah. Because first of all, try putting up signs in the Xerox building. Yeah. Or maybe you could put something up on a telephone pole outside. I don't know. Yeah, using the photos. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's his job. I'm not sure.
I think he would. Chances of,
Ron, Ron, you woke up on the cynical side of the bed today. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's do another shaila having to do with Hashavas Aveda. This is Hashavat Aveda Betelekart. Does anyone know what a telekart is? I didn't know either until I looked it up. So telekart is a contraction of two words, telephone kartis, which means what? A phone card. A phone card. A phone card. Okay. So you find someone's phone card. And do people still use phone cards anymore? You know, the technology is constantly changing. So, like nowadays, well, first of all, people have a Ravkav card today to use public transportation, but you don't need a Ravkav anymore. You have your phone. There's an app called Move It, and that's what I use when I go to Israel. You buy a pass for the train, you buy a pass for the light rail, you buy a pass for the bus, and it's amazing. Yeah, yeah, it's incredible. But okay, so this tshuva was written 5 minutes ago, so the technology may have changed since then. So this is you find someone's phone card or their Ravkav card. Okay, Adam shematza telekart shel telephone siburi ve'alav katuv shemechil esrim sichot v'nisharu bo sheva esrei sichot. Okay, so you find this phone card, and the phone card is good for 20 phone conversations, and you check the card and it has 17 left on it. Now, we all know that a phone card, just like any other lost item, in order for the person who lost it to claim it, has to provide a siman. So the question is, what would be considered a valid siman? Does he have to know that there's only 17 calls left? What if I bought that card? Do I really keep track about how many calls I have left on the card? I mean, so how am I supposed to provide a siman? I guess maybe if I say that it was a card that has that was good for 20 calls. I don't know. Yeah, I don't even know how it works. I've never used such a card, but I'm assuming that, it tells you. Well, who does that? People don't do that. Okay. Yeah, a gift card. I get an Amazon gift card. I don't mark down on the card how much I have left on the card. So what kind of siman can you provide? This is a general question about the laws of simanim. What sometimes it's very difficult to identify the siman that you have to provide when you lose a loss and there's a lost item. This is really what this is about. What is it, Izzy?
You could put your name on it.
You could put your name on it. You could do a lot of things, but how many people generally do that? Yeah. Do you put your? I mean, it's very. How do you put your
When
name
I had a
on a
when I had a
plastic?
when I had a pocket protector and I worked in England, I put my name on my phone card.
Yeah, I guess people with pocket protectors do that. Yeah. I think I think they're called nerds. Yeah, nerds or geeks. Yeah, yeah,
They don't lose anything.
yeah. That's right. Yeah. All right. Okay. So anyway, so is that called a siman or not? Okay. So let's learn a little bit about simanim. Ita bibraita bibava mitzia. Omar mar. Chavuyo shel yain v'shemen hare elu shalo. So the Gemara in Bava Metzia says that if you find a barrel of wine or a barrel of oil in a public domain, you can keep it. So why can you keep it? Because it doesn't have a siman. But what about the Mishnah that says that if you find a barrel of wine or a barrel of oil, you have to announce it, you have to return it? Amar Bizera, Amarav, Matnitin Birashum. So one opinion says it's because the Mishnah is talking about barrels of wine or oil that have a siman on it because it has like some kind of insignia to designate that it came from a certain vineyard or olive orchard. Abaya Omar, b'Mishnah ben Duber, kodem sheniftechu ha'otzros, v'lachein haroshem hayasimin ki lo hayu harbe chavuyos. He says, Abaya says the Mishnah is talking about before the storehouses were open, meaning I guess it was before the season opened where people were selling barrels like this en masse. And so therefore these were rare commodities at this time of year. So the fact that there may be some kind of marking on the barrel means absolutely nothing, because once the season arrives for merchants to sell these barrels, even a marking is insignificant because who knows where it came from. So therefore, it's even a marking at a certain point would be insignificant because the markings are ubiquitous. So therefore, you can't use that as a simon. V'chein pasuk harambam v'zelushana. And so the Rambam writes as follows: Kade yayin v'kade shemen chayiv lahachriz shekol elu yesh lahem simanim muvhakim. So the Rambam writes as follows: if you find a barrel of wine or oil, then you have to try to find its owner, because there is usually identifying markings on these barrels. If, however, the storehouses, the season has arrived where merchants start selling these barrels, so then you're allowed to keep it. And the reason is, and that's true even if there are markings on the barrels, because all barrels have similar markings. And it turns out, therefore, that a barrel that has a marking on it is so commonplace that it's no longer considered a siman once all of these barrels now become readily available in the marketplace. And therefore, it's no different from a loaf of bread that you find that is baked in an industrial bakery, where the Mishnah says that you can keep it because since it was baked on such a mass level, any kind of marking is insignificant. Like, let's say you find a loaf of bread that has the Angel Bakery or Wonder Bread, or whatever marking on it that says it came from a specific bakery. Well, that's not a siman because those loaves of bread are so ubiquitous that that's not enough of a specific identifying sign to consider that to be a siman. So this whole idea of being able to provide a siman, the siman has to be such that there's a very strong likelihood that that siman connects the lost item to the person who provides that siman. If, however, that kind of identifying sign is widespread on hundreds or thousands of a similar item, then just because a person was able to provide that siman is really not meaningful. And so the siman has to be specific enough to make it extremely likely that the person providing the siman is the owner. That's essentially this lesson that we learned from this discussion in the Gemara. The Kasvu Tosfos. So Tosfos now say the Im Tomar Midas Hayayin Lihavi Siman. Tosfos say, well, you find a barrel of wine. Why don't you say that the volume of the barrel, how much wine is in it, that should be a siman as well. The Yesh Lomar Shemedubar Begemara Shahachavis Maleya. So the answer is Tosfos, because we're talking about when you find a full barrel of wine. The Chol HaChavuyo Shavos. And therefore, and all barrels at the time of the Gemara were the same size. And it's probably true today. When they produce wine in barrels, there's a standard barrel size. And so therefore, if it's a full barrel, that's a standard full barrel of wines. That's not a siman. Aval im ein hachavis maleya, yehe siman lomar kama yain yeshbo. If, however, you find a non-full barrel of wine, then the amount of wine in the barrel itself is a siman. So if you find a barrel that's only a quarter full, you would have an obligation to try to find the owner and say, whoever can provide a siman, the barrel will be theirs. And if a person says, well, was the barrel a quarter full with wine, that would be a good enough siman to return it to that person. V'chein kosav atur, b'shem ri, dafka b'balayim shekol minasa mishavot, az ze nechshav she'ein bohem siman. And the Torah writes the same thing, that it's only if you find a full barrel do we say that there's no really specific enough of a siman to be an identifying siman, and therefore you can keep it. Aval imheim chaserot yesh bahem siman b'midah shebahem. But if it's a barrel that is only partially full, so then that the owner of the barrel can identify how much was in the barrel, like a quarter, half, 3/4, 2/3. So then that would be a valid siman. Usually it's by volume. How are you going to know the weight? Well, you can open the top of the barrel. I mean, people generally open the top of the barrel and they knew how to seal it afterwards. V'chein pasak harama, the Rama paskins the same way. Amotze chavuyo shel yain v'shemen v'chayotze bazeh, la'achar sheniftechu ha'otzros, ein rishuman siman ve'ein chayav la'achzer. The Rama writes this explicitly. He says, if you find barrels of wine or oil, if once the marketplace is opened for this commodity, any markings on the barrel is not sufficient of a siman, unless it's truly unique, right? But any general markings are not significant, and therefore you would not have an obligation to return a barrel that you find that doesn't have a siman. But v'dafkim kol hachavuyo shavos ve'hein maleos. But that's only if all of the barrels are full. Avalim chaseros hein yesh siman b'midah shebahem. But if they're somewhat empty, then that in itself is a valid siman. Dimsa lefi zeh shebetelekart. So if you find a phone card like this, kevin sheyeshnam kailu maleim v'yesh chasirim yoter v'yesh chasirim pachot, minyan hasichot shenishraru betelekart nechshav l'siman. So he says it would seem, therefore, that is, if a person comes forward and says, I had only made 3 calls on this 20-call telecart, there should be 17 calls left, that would be a good siman. And you would be obligated, therefore, to post an announcement saying, I found this telecart. If you can, if you can provide a siman, you will get it back. Okay, we'll hold it here for today. We'll continue this tshuva tomorrow. All right, have a great
Okay.
day.